Today's video is overhaul and recondition of set of CX500 carbs. Take as many photos as possible before you even lay a screwdriver on them, to make sure you know when you put it back together where everything goes, what everything should look like. One of the areas where people get mixed up is the choke lever. Look how the choke lever works. Both chokes operate from those springs, so get an idea of how it works before you take it apart. Take in-depth photographs so you get a good idea of how it works. This bit here that controls the throttle flap, be very careful with that. See that bit there? If you lever this, you'll snap that off, and then that is scrap. Try getting one. You can't get them, but they're not cheap, and they're an absolute pain because you've done something that you shouldn't have done. Good look all over, make sure it's okay, and then start the strip. So the best way is to separate the two carbs and then dismantle each carb into its own little pot. If you put all the bits in a pot, then you know what's in that pot, what carb it come from. So to strip down these carbs, they're fairly straightforward. You just remove those screws there, those four, so we can get that off. Turn it over, remove these four here, same thing. You end up then with the carburetors as two separate units. Throw the bolts in the pot. Have a pot for bolts, because the probability is you're going to replace all the bolts, unless they're a particularly unusual bolt. You're going to replace all of them. The plates, put those plates to one side, because you're going to be cleaning them up and either painting them or replating them or whatever. And then the action is to take the carburetors apart. So when the plates are removed, the carbs can then be pulled apart. What will happen is this bit here comes apart, this fuel tube comes apart, and it'll come apart where the bell mouths will run from. Notice there's an interconnecting spring. So interconnecting spring into your pot. There's a little spring here which has got to be unhooked carefully, which releases that, and then you've got the fuel pipe there into the pot. One carburetor can be put away, and then we'll concentrate on just one carb, because pretty much they're very similar. Once you strip one down, you can then strip the other one down. Now have a good look all around it. Make sure you know what you're seeing, what you can look for, and then we're just going to physically take it all apart. So I'm going to keep that screw with that, because that is peculiar to just that bracket. to not get these two jets mixed up. So what I'm going to put that jet there, undo that, then screw that jet back into there, so then you know when on reassembly what jet goes where. So put that jet back in there so that you know that's the jet, that's the main jet that was in the emulsion tube. Look at the state of these. These are really riled up, aren't they? This is really gummed up, this carb. This carb's had a lot of gummy, crappy material in it. Look at the layout of that. It's essential that that goes back in exactly the same way. So keep that to one side. Take note of where that spring goes. Don't lose the spring. There is a felt seal in there which must be removed very carefully and placed on that shaft so that you can use it for rebuild. circlip there to remove, then this shaft comes off. Don't lose the circlip. Thrust washer. So that's most of the stripping down, but there's two things still left to get out. One, there is an emulsion tube, which is down there where that screwdriver is, and that is that little lump that you can see sticking out just in front of the main jet. That's conventionally screwed, so it just unscrews. Need a nice thin screwdriver, but a good quality one, because otherwise it'll muller it. Now this particular one is absolutely solid, so I'm going to have to think about something to soak that before I can actually try and get it out, because otherwise it's going to destroy it, and then this carburetor body's knackered. The other one is down there. Now this one is a little bit more involved because it's pressed in. It does not screw out. It screws out on the later carbs, but not on this one. So you have to make up a system to remove it, which I'll show you in a minute. And then once those two are out, this particular carburetor is completely stripped. This carburetor is a bit... yeah, it's got lots of, look at all that emulsified fuel, horrendous, isn't it? That's what's gluing these jets in. So you might even find that jet you have to pull out might not come out because of the horrendous situation. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to clean it, probably ultrasonic it before I even try and get it out, because I don't want to muller it, because that way then this carburetor is then scrap. So let's give it a little bit of a clean up and see what happens afterwards. Just screw a tap into there to remove this piece. This is to get the needle out. And then pull that. That comes out like that. And then conventional screwdriver removes the protector, and then out comes the needle, out comes that. So the strip down is complete, the basic strip down. There's the first carb, and what you can see is an extremely ugly array of corroded, gummed up parts. What I've got to do with these is turn them in to a highly efficient and very brilliantly designed tool for emulsifying air and fuel in exactly the right amounts to run an engine exactly as it wants to be run. These carbs have been left, by the looks of it, with fuel in the chambers. I've got everything apart now except for the pilot jet and the emulsification jet. Both carbs are the same. This one here, even the needle was a bit of a problem because the needle was stuck in the emulsion tube. So my plan now is every single part has got to be cleaned. What I'll probably do, I'll probably put the bodies into a conventional engine cleaner mix. Then I'll put them in the ultrasonic cleaner. Then I might attack those pilot jets. Got to get them out. Look at that float bowl. Here's one I'd done earlier from another set of carbs. That's what it should look like when it's finished. From that gummed up to bilio to that, lovely. Eat your dinner for that. So let's get into the cleaning. What I'm going to do, I'm going to ultrasonic quite a few bits of it and get it as clean as possible. Notice I've put all of the nuts and bolts in a bowl, because I replace all of the nuts and bolts unless they're specific nuts or bolts or whatever. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to sort those through in a moment. I've got a whole selection of bolts, so I'm going to select all of those, get those all ready for the rebuild. The joining pieces, I'm going to clean them up. I'll either plate them or paint them. I normally paint them because plating can be a little bit of a pain on larger items with the kit that I've got. Everything else is going to be cleaned immaculately, and then I'll enjoy the rebuild, because then I'll have a beautiful set of carbs. Let's see how we get on. Now the jet we're on about is that one in there. On this particular carburetor, it's pressed in. So what we have to do, we have to tap an M3 hole in that end and then pull it out with a bolt. Right, so what I'm going to do now, the nerve-wracking job, 2.5 mil. I've got to drill this jet out, 2.5 mil. Once I've drilled it out 2.5 mil, I'm not going too deep. Once it's been drilled out 2.5 mil, then we can set it up to be tapped. So we get an M3 tap and hold your breath whilst you put this M3 tap in. You just tap down. I mean, you've seen this loads of times. Loads of people have done this. Just put it in a few threads. Don't want to go too far, but you want to go far enough to warrant getting it out. That's it. And once you've gone in, a few turns like that, you then remove the tap and you get an M3 bolt with an M3 nut and a washer on it. Got a nice big washer. Unfortunately, these bolts here are the only ones that are in my local shop. Otherwise I would have bought slightly longer ones. But you screw these in, or screw the bolt in to the thread you just made. It should go in fairly easily. If it doesn't go in easily, then there's something wrong. It should go in fairly easily. Once it's gone in, that's about the depth. You then unwind the bolt, or the nut should I say, I always get it wrong. And then you just do this bolt up. No, did it wrong again. The nut up. You do the nut up. What happens is, when you're doing the nut up, that's pulling the jet out of the carb body. It's only in there about 1/4 of an inch. It's not a big long bit that it's holding on. So you don't need to do it for too long. Oh, that's it, knock the camera down. Do it for too long. You just pull it out like that until all of a sudden you have the jet. The camera won't focus, of course it will. No, won't focus on that. Can it focus on that camera? See, the human eye is so much more efficient than the camera. Look at that. There is the jet pulled out. When you look at the jet, that clean bit there, that's where it was pressed in. It's only pressed in on that little bit there. It's filthy dirty. This carb's been cleaned, but it's filthy dirty, which is obviously why it needs to be taken out. We're going to remove the nut and bolt, get it right. We'll remove that, and then we're going to soak the jet itself in carb cleaner to see if we can then clear it. I don't think anybody does these. I don't think you can buy new ones. If you know anybody that sells these, let us know, because I've got quite a few CX500 carbs and I would love to be able to replace the jets, but then I suppose everybody on the planet would. So yeah, next step, cleaning it up. What I've done here, I've put some carb and choke cleaner into a lid and I've dropped the jet into there. I'm going to leave it for about a day just to soak, to see if that will eat away the crap that's inside. This stuff really does eat crap away, so we'll have to wait and see. So there you are then, it's been in there a day now. So let's have a look, see what it's like. That is really cleaned up brilliantly. That stuff eats. Look at that. That's what it is. Just stuff I buy from sort of like supermarkets. It's brilliant. Don't spray it on rubber though, or anything that's got rubber in it, because it eats rubber alive. That is superb. So what I need to do now is to find out whether it's clear. Now, for that, I've got these little things, I always call them rifflers, little riffler files. We used to use them for cleaning bits up, you know, fine jets and that, in the days gone by when every car had a carburettor on it. I'm just going to use a little riffler file just to go through all of the holes to make sure I can get that hole there. That's the one, I've got to get it clear. Let's see how we get on. There, little tiny riffler file. Poke it through the holes. Make sure that they're clear. But the most important one, of course, I don't know if it'll go through. I don't think it's not thin enough to go through. So what I'm going to have to do here is get a wire brush, get a hair off of the wire brush, and pie. That's it, look, that's gone through. So you just do that a few times. That's cleared it. You'll have to do that a few times to it has cleared it. But I've got to make sure that it's clear and that all the debris from when I tapped it is cleared out. So I'm going to blow that out with air. There, I just had a little play around with that, blowing it out, and it's completely clear. You won't be able to see that on the camera, but it's now completely clear, and it's a perfect jet. able to go back in the carb. So cracking, we've completed the mission. The jet's been removed, it's been degreased, and it's now been reconditioned, so able to be used again. I would prefer to replace it with a brand new one, but can't, so I'm happy with that. So here, after a large amount of time cleaning, checking and going over every single part, notice a full pack of brand new bolts all ready to go. I've already started to clean up and paint some of the central parts. The bodies are immaculate, all cleaned, scrubbed out, every hole clean, every little bit. And then we go into the little bits and pieces, a lot of which will be replaced in the kit when we get the kit. All the jets and all that, whatever, all clean, blown through, made sure they're immaculate. So now we've got a couple of bits and pieces to do, like finish painting these central bits, and then we can start the reassembly. The reassembly starts with the press-in pilot jet. So here we're going to look at what do we do now with these pilot jets. These pilot jets have now been intimately cleaned and they are now perfect. The hole is clear, everything is immaculate, they're cleaned up chemically and they're ready to be pressed back in. So obviously the body is fully cleaned and all of the holes have been pushed out with our pipe cleaner to make sure they're absolutely first class. Been through the ultrasonic cleaner twice. They've had a real in-depth clean. So these bodies are now pretty much as clean as I can get them. So what we're going to do now is look at how you put this pilot jet back in there. So to reinstall this jet, get the 3mm bolt, screw it into the thread that you've tapped earlier into the jet, drop the jet into the hole and tap it. Unscrew the 3mm bolt. The jet is reinstalled. What we've got to do now, I'm going to get an airline, I'm going to blow through there to make sure that it's clear, and the jet is back home. Ready to go. There you go. Restoration starts by reinstalling the felt seal very, very carefully. Gently, just gently pushing it into the opening so that when the shaft goes through, the felt seal provides an effective seal. I don't know of any kits that give you this seal, so if the seal on your carbs is broken, I don't know whether it's possible to get one. That's why when you remove them you have to be so careful, because if they get broken or destroyed then you could be in trouble. Now what I do now, I use a very fine drop of oil just to lubricate the seal, so when you put the shaft in, the shaft's not going to rip the seal. Then introduce your shaft gently. And now we have to refit the bell mouth. Make sure you use new bolts. Throttle valve fitted. Idle adjust bolt fitted. Next, place this item on here. Put that spring around there and around there, and then just do this up as normal, and then that should keep it in the right position. Now this should be free on the shaft, and the spring should pull it back against there, so when it goes up it will actually open the throttle. Part of the choke mechanism. Then fit this lever here, spring goes over there, held in place by a thrust washer and a circlip. Then that acts upon this relay lever here to activate the choke. Make sure it's touching that lever. Then the next thing, choke, flap and bar. When assembling the choke, this spring has got to go on so that it fits there behind that. Spring's got to go on so it fits behind there. So, push the choke shaft through so that this part of the choke shaft sits behind the choke lever. So that's how it'll go out like that. Then this spring will be hung over the second choke shaft on the other carburettor when we come to complete. So we fit that, and then we fit the choke plate, the valve. A brief look at what's involved parts wise. All the parts have been cleaned, thoroughly inspected, replaced as required. And now you've seen a little bit of the initial assembly, but now I'm going to go into the full assembly of this carb. Then when the other carb's done, I'll show you how to join them. So the next, we get the emulsion tube, fully cleaned. Obviously everything is A-OK with this, and we feed it into the hole, and then very carefully, when I say with a decent screwdriver, screw it in. Screw it in until it bottoms, and then check to make sure it's sticking up. Next, this little jet tube. And look at this. There's a little beveled edge on it. That beveled edge must face into the carburettor. That must face, that there must face into the bell mouth. Is that when you screw the emulsion tube in, when you screw the emulsion tube in, they will match there. If you get it in the other way round, they won't match. So, making sure that ends up, drop that into there and then screw the emulsion tube home. That should then stick up in the middle there. Nip that up and then fit the main jet. The main jet is the one with the higher number. So you've got another jet which is identical to the main jet. That goes in there, and that's a smaller number. Don't get that wrong, because it can be a bit raw. Do the main jet up firmly. That's it. Then fit the other jet over the emulsion tube that you just fitted in. Once again, just do it up, and then on these carbs, where that pressed in jet is, little rubber that you push in seals that up. So that's your jets into position, everything locked up, ready to go. Now the next thing we're going to concern ourselves with is the float. On the CX500 carburetor, the float hasn't got a section that can be moved. The needle valve fits between those two lugs. Now notice, because the float is plastic and those lugs are plastic, you can't do anything about it. So if the float height is wrong, you can't do anything about it. So potentially it could be an issue, but normally it's not. Attached to the float into its home, and then past the float centering pole into position, and then you've got the float and the needle valve and then once it's attached, there it is. You cannot adjust the float height with the standard float because it's all plastic. So the next thing to concern ourselves with is the float chamber. Here's the float chamber, lovely and clean. Yeah, nice, yeah, that's good, yeah, but that gasket's no good. So, get that gasket out. The gasket must be replaced. I mean, you know, these crush down, and if they've been crushed down for the last 40 odd years, it's kind of like, you know, not rocket science to realise that they're probably not their best. So it might be a good idea to replace these, even if you think they're okay. That's quite badly crushed. Now I'm going to just clean out the inside with a Dremel and then put a brand new gasket in it. There you go, that's clean. So now ready to accept the new gasket. Once the new float bowl gasket is on, fit the float bowl using new screws. we go. Float bowl on. Jet's fitted. Now we come to the air cut-off valve. Air cut-off valve. We fit the rubber valve, having inspected it and made sure that it's in excellent condition. We fit the rubber in the little hole there. The spring, which fits in there quite nicely. Then the cover, push down into position. Don't move the cover whilst the bolts are being tightened up. Tighten down progressively, and then that's the air cut-off valve. So that leaves now the piston and chamber. Here's the piston. Slide the needle back into position carefully. Lower this piece into position. Flat bladed screwdriver. Do it up. Tight. Needle should still be free. Then this little plastic plug which you put on the end. Voila, like that. Now that is ready to go into the carb. Here's the carb. So we're going to fit the little plastic guide. This guides the piston, keeps the piston in the right position. Once that's done up, fit the gasket. Make sure the edge, that edge is facing up. Fit the piston and the little guide. The little guide helps you locate in there. Ensure the needle goes into the jet. Fit the spring, and then fit the nicely polished top gently, and use new screws to bolt it into position. Check that the piston moves freely. It's getting there now, isn't it? Beginning to look quite nice. Only a few more bits left to do. The pilot air. So you have the pilot air, a spring, a washer, and an O-ring. Make sure the O-ring goes right over the end, so you get it adjusted like that. You then screw that into the pilot air hole. Screw it the right way in until it seats. Screw it in gently, don't go mad. Once it's there, count how many turns you take it out. Half, 1, 1.5. Now 1.5 is normally a basic setting. Check the workshop manual to find out exactly what it should be, and then set both carburetors when you build the other one to exactly the same, and then you can adjust that once you start once you start running the bike. One last thing on this particular carb is we've got the throttle cable bracket, which we put on now before we join it to the new or to the other set of carbs, because you won't be able to gain access to this screw once you've actually joined it, and it'll be an absolute pain if you have to take them all apart just to do this this bracket. It's annoying, so make sure you do it up. That is this carburetor complete. So now is the action of joining them together. So you'll do exactly the same with the other carburetor, and then you'll get that, and then you'll join them into as one. Here's the other carburetor, all assembled in exactly the same way that this one has been. Now when you join them together, you've got to be careful. You've got to make sure that this goes into there, that this goes onto that, so that little bracket there, that little bit there has to go onto the back of that, and then we'll re-hook the spring round, I'll show you, and this has to go on there with a little spring in between the two, a compression spring. So what you do is you align the throttle valves up. So the first thing to go in is the fuel tube. So get the throttle valves aligned up. Notice there's a little cutout here which allows you, on this carburetor, you pull this down, and that allows you then to hook that into there, that section there, that bit on that carburetor, that's where it goes in, and then there's a spring that goes between there and the next carburetor. So you've got to do a few things all at once. Once you've achieved that, a little bit of a jiggery pokery thing, we then need to make sure that we bolt the carbs to the brackets. Now each one of those bolts, do them up loosely, just do them up until they just start to compress the spring washer. because then what we've got to do then, we've got to check that the alignments is correct and everything is where it should be. So, done up. Now, you must make sure that this spring is located like so. You must make sure that the choke lever is like that. So now we can start putting bits on. Now this little spring here has to hook round the little part of the choke. So this little spring here that you put on earlier, the end has to hook round there. Like so. Like so. That way then. So eventually then, you put this little spring, it has to go round once and then clip onto there, so that when you operate the choke, you pull the lever, the valve shut, then they open again. It's a spring pressure that allows them to shut, because they can then go against the spring. It's not easy to do that. Make sure the fuel tube goes in, rotates nicely. Then we need to bench synchronise them. This screw here, you screw this out until you've synchronised them. How do you bench synchronise? Well, there's several ways. I've done a video on it recently, but basically you use this screw here to open this valve, and when it's opened a set amount, you test it with a gauge, and then you have to adjust that bolt there until this valve is open exactly the same amount. Once that's done, you then lock that nut up there, and then the carburetors are synchronized. And then basically you've pretty much finished the mission.